Welcome to this press conference called by the Alliance for Change for Friday, September 27, 2024. With me at the head table today, I have to my extreme left, Mrs. Kathy Hughes, Executive Member of the Alliance for Change, Party Chairman David Patterson, Vice President of our youth arm, Youth for Change, Mr. Onyx Duncan, and leader of the Alliance for Change, Mr. Nigel Hughes. We will start with a statement by Onyx, and joining us online, we have Dr. Vincent Adams. We will start with Mr. Onyx Duncan, who will deliver a statement addressing the water situation in many parts of Guyana. Then we'll go to Dr. Vince and continue back at the head table. Mr. Duncan.
Good afternoon, members of the media. We've noted, the Youth for Change have noted the current water situation here in Guyana in several parts. And, it's been affecting most of our citizenry, and we would like to make a statement on it. The Youth for Change, the youth arm of the Alliance for Change, AFC, calls on the Guyana Water Incorporated to address the challenges of accessing potable water in sections of Guyana. Access to clean water is a human right that impacts public health and quality of life. We urge GWI and the government to prioritize this critical issue immediately. The YFC notes the ongoing situation of inadequate to no water distribution in almost all regions in Guyana. There are known reports from Prospect, East Bank Demerara, Tushan, East Bank Essequibo, the Parfait Harmony, West Bank Demerara, Betterfo-Acton, and Pleasance on the east coast of Demerara, and communities in other regions. The water situation cannot be ignored any longer. Guyana is known as the land of many waters, and it is discouraging for citizens to be struggling to access to potable water. This water situation will affect the health and well-being of citizens for not days or weeks, but months, disrupting daily life and hindering economic opportunities. Guyana Water Incorporated has remained conspicuously silent, failing to address the concerns raised by citizens or to provide any considerable updates on the status of the water situation, as they are not answering customer calls via their customer support line. And this lack of communication by GWI is most unacceptable and undermines the trust that consumers have an organization like consumers have on organization like provide critical services. Guyana Water Incorporated was allocated $17.7 billion in 2023 budget and another $22.5 billion in the 2024 budget to improve access to potable water in the hinterland and coastal communities. The YFC calls on GWI to take responsibility for this situation and take immediate action. It is important that a comprehensive water management strategy be designed that address both current challenges and future needs of our country. Immediate action should be taken to provide clean and adequate potable water to all affected areas. This includes utilizing the budget to have adequate infrastructure, maintenance of existing systems, and exploration of sustainable water sourcing solutions to provide quality service. GWI needs to reach out to the affected communities to understand their needs and incorporate their feedback into plans for better water service. Regular communication and open forums should be established to ensure that residents are informed and involved. GWI needs to assess the current water challenges in the affected areas. GWI needs to publicly acknowledge this situation, take responsibility for the situation, and provide transparent updates on the outcomes of such findings. Guyana Water Incorporated has been silent on the water situation. They have not dealt with the citizen concerns or provide any information. Customer support is unreachable. GWI needs to ensure that Guyanese can enjoy the right to clean and safe drinking water. Thank you.
Thank you, Onyx. Dr. Vince, you have a statement for us today? Dr. Vincent Adams?
You hear me?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Beverly.
Go right ahead.
Good afternoon to the media and welcome. Yeah, I need to address a couple of things here. Some of the rantings of the vice president in yesterday's press conference that must not go unanswered. First, the vice president accused the AFC of collaborating or colluding with the Kaieteur News and sharing questions, based on the questions that were asked of him. Well, this is directly directed to Mr. Jaglio. Unlike you, yes, the AFC is a party of integrity, professionalism, transparency, and competence, and don't think like you do. So please don't judge us by your standard. For example, when you had your favorite reporter control your so-called press conference and asking obviously planted questions. Now, the next thing he said yesterday that was it really wasn't revealing, because he's been saying this at almost every one of his press conferences to look out for the draft of still legislation. And he's now hinting, the news is really that he's now hinting that they are now in favor of full liability coverage, which no one should believe. And it's just, again, this whole legislation, this article legislation is nothing but a hoax to override Judge Kissoon's ruling. Or else, why would they fight tooth and nail, taking it all the way to the CCJ to be Exxon's partner in the appeal against their own people? And then why would Jaglio still spout his idiocy about seizing assets to pay for an oil spill? Article 20 is clear. Article 20 of the PSA is crystal clear that all fixed and movable assets belong to the government. So it's foolish for him to be talking about seizing assets. And by the way, he claims that there is a $20 billion list of assets that Exxon has. And we here at the AFC called several times, and animal media called several times for him to produce that list. So I can't do anything now to produce that list. Then third, he took exception to the media. He said the media is accusing the PPPC of secretly changing the permits to reduce the environmental permit obligation. It is a fact. And folks, go check the permits. And I have them right before me here. The permit, the fire permit, for example, because the coalition government, the two permits that we basically wrote with the Lisa 2 and the Lisa 3 permit, and those were where we made the changes more, especially in the fire permit. The fire permit was signed on September 24, 2020, after the government changed hands, but we had already written the draft and nothing changed. They changed it. That September 20 permit, they changed it in June of last year without making a publication. So when he says that they didn't secretly do, yes, they did. He's claiming that we put it on our website. The normal procedure is that you put it into the newspaper. That was done. As a matter of fact, I just stumbled upon it, and others did. Nobody knew that they changed the permit. And then he says and then here's some things that were changed in that permit. Water dumping. They tripled it, in the draft permit or the permit that we put in before we got out of office. It said there shall be no dumping of water, it has to be reinjected. And the capping stock that would stop an oil spill or well blow has to be at the site within 3 days. They tripled it from 3 to 9 days. And then finally, he keeps lying at every one of his press conferences that somehow they've improved the environmental permit. So let me ask Mr. Jaglio, is canceling the full liability coverage that the coalition put in place, is that environmental improvement? Is canceling flaring? Is canceling the prohibition on flaring that was put in there by the coalition, is that environmental improvement? Is canceling the water dumping or the reinjection of the water is that, and dumping it instead, is that environmental improvement? It's tripling the deployment of the capping stock. Is that environmental improvement? And is hiding Exxon's files in the executive office where not even the staff could have access to it? Is that environmental improvement? And it's canceling the capacity building that the coalition developed. Is that environmental improvement? And it's canceling the plan of the coalition government to have an EPA office in every single region by the year 2021. And we'd already put in place, we went from 1 to 3 offices that is currently there. And the plan was, and we already had locations and office space and everything, to have an EPA office in every single region by 2021. Is that environmental improvement? So we call upon the Vice President to stop your response to the line about improved environmental stewardship, because your government is doing exactly the opposite, and the people ought to know that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vincent Adams. We will now take a statement from Ms. Kathy Hughes and followed immediately after by the passenger.
Setting the record straight, the AFC's success in improving internet connectivity across Guyana. The Alliance for Change is disturbed at the massive expanse of misinformation, blatant lies, and unsavory innuendos delivered to the citizens of Guyana by the Vice President yesterday in his usual cuss-out, abuse-out so-called press conference. Surely the citizens of Guyana deserve better. Again, we're forced to recognize that the VP is unfamiliar with the truth or is attempting to change the facts. Whatever his agenda, I am forced to respond and set the record straight. The APNU AFC had the vision to understand the transformational power the use of technology could have on development, and therefore created a Ministry of Public Telecommunications. This could give dedicated focus to this sector, providing an opportunity to plan, expand, and implement e-government services and tackle the digital divide through increased access to the internet. And yes, Mr. VP, the UN Sustainable Development Goals have decreed access to the internet a human right in today's world. Now the facts. The ministry started in January of 2016. One of our key focus areas from inception was following up on the ICT Access for Hinterland, Poor and Remote Communities project, which the Vice President mentioned yesterday. The VP stated that it was in the works, but in reality, it was more like languishing under the PPP. In 2017, after numerous meetings and after selecting UNDP as the implementation and monitoring partner, the project provided $17 million in US from the GRIF Fund. We had a public signing at the start of the project, which was reported extensively in the local Guyana media and internationally, with me signing as the minister and UNDP representative at the time, Khadija Musa, at the official start date of December 1st, 2017. I have the project document here, and of course it is also online. The VP says that we abandoned this hub project, but really nothing could be further from the truth. We signed off, started, and implemented that project, and of course I told you that was in 2017. What is shameful is that 7 years later, the last 4 years under the PPP, the project's financial performance at November of 2023 was only at 46%. You can check the GRIF website for this information, which I did just today. What is even more worse is that more than 7.8 million of the initial 17 million US remains unspent. The innuendo that somehow funds were misspent and missing under the APNU AFC, despite the careful monitoring and management of the UN by the UNDP, is a slap in the face of this reputable international organization. But the sad fact is that once again, and due to the slothfulness in implementing projects and this project and its delivery of internet, today we know that it may have had a negative impact on the learning and passes in CXC and CSEC, in hinterland communities where we know access to the internet was so important to improving levels of education and learning. In the 2 years since 2016, the start of the ministry, to 2018, when the no confidence vote reduced the ability to spend, the following was achieved. In the year prior to this GRIF project coming on stream, we took the decision to allocate government funds to improve internet connectivity across Guyana. This can be checked in the national budget allocations of 2016 to 2019. We created the concept of a community location hub, which we branded a hub, which would provide free internet access somewhere in each and every community. By 2019, we had started that process, and 72 hinterland communities were connected to the internet free of cost by the National Data Management Authority. And I do have a list here that has those 72 and the remaining 24 that we anticipated would be completed by 2019. By 2020, we had connected, and this is what the record shows and is undisputed. We had connected over 170 community ICT hubs. The VP, in his repeat of lies and mistruths, suggests we created only in our strongholds. That's his exact words. Only in our strongholds. Nothing could be further from the truth. I have a newspaper here, and I don't want to start flipping through the pages. But as you can see, this is an article on Blackbush Polder, the hub in Blackbush Polder that was created. And we went on, and I am proud to say I personally opened hubs in Blackbush Polder, Blairmont, Crabwood Creek, and that's only to name a few. Time does not permit me to list all that we did in those areas that he claims would not have been our strongholds. But I have the information and can release it after. The VP scoffed at the fact that we used, and his exact quote, we use low bandwidth from satellite that cost a lot of money. And you had to move it back and forth to get any internet. Well, Mr. VP, we had those huge satellite dishes, the VSAT satellite dishes. And I cannot imagine how any citizen would have been able to climb up to the satellite dish and fiddle with it to get a little internet access. These infantile comments just display his lack of understanding of the technologies available at the time. And at this point in time, I really want to look at what the Vice President calls a lot of money. This broadband internet access was purchased primarily from the two main telecommunication companies at the time, GT&T and Digicel, purchased by the government and not in some side deal, as he commented yesterday. And as I said, it was provided free to Guyanese. We consider this not a lot of money, but money well spent. The start of providing free internet, the foundation of dealing with Guyana's digital divide. Over the years, the technology has changed and improved, and we're happy that the government has heeded our call to utilize the services of Starlink, finally. I want to examine the VP's consideration of a lot of money in a little more detail and to remind us of a few things that took place. Would he agree that the PPP One Laptop per Family project, which cost Guyana $4.3 billion in 2011, was a lot of money? This was supposed to provide 90,000 families with laptops, but fell short by 31,697, or 35%. The audit on this project, conducted in 2015, highlighted only 55,145 laptops were ever acquired and only 50,009 distributed. 5,000 laptops from the project, costing more than 300 million Guyana dollars, were either stolen or found to be defective. In 2016, the working laptops that did remain from another of President Jack Deo's failed projects, you will recall, we gave to teachers under the one laptop per teacher project. And again, any search of the internet will come up with a series of occasions when those were handed out to teachers all across Guyana. On November 2nd, 2018, the then opposition leader Jack Deo, as reported in the Chronicle, admitted that the $1.3 billion fiber optic cable project, another of his supposed transformational projects, was a complete failure. This was under the e-governance unit headed by then Alexei Ramatar. You see, the Friends and Family Network was around since then. $1.3 billion with nothing to show for it. Now, was that a lot of money to the VP? The VP asked, what did I personally do? Under my watch, we connected approximately 170 primary schools, 100 secondary schools, more than 30 tertiary and educational institutions, including the campuses of the University of Guyana, and most importantly, 120 government ministries and government agencies, RDC offices. Every ministry was then equipped with state-of-the-art video conferencing facilities to ensure intra-government connectivity. On the private sector support side, I granted permission for eNetworks and Exxon to land their fiber optic cables, which have clearly transformed the ability of this nation to communicate with the rest of the world and for citizens to access the internet. At the time, too, we gave provisional approval to Digicel to bring their cable, although they were not ready at the time. We trained more than 4,700 Guyanese, especially young people, in basic ICT skills, opened the Center of Excellence with support from the Government of India, which is located on the university campus and was designed to train employees of the public sector in ICT skills. We hear nothing of that entity today. Designed and implemented the National Broadband Project, a $36 million loan from the Chinese government, which many people will recall expanded our e-government fiber network to facilitate e-government services, established a new and secured government data center, saw the implementation of the Safe City video surveillance system, and the erection of 100 cameras across Georgetown to aid in crime fighting, and of course, a state-of-the-art command center, which receives live footage from all the cameras. We provided free internet and facilitated a home for STEM Guyana, for example, at the sports hall. A mere fraction. All of this is just a mere fraction of what was achieved in 3 to 4 short years, all without a single dollar of oil money. We are proud of our achievements, and I regret, unfortunately, despite the length of time I've taken to explain all of this, I felt it was necessary to correct the untruths. We expect this government to expand on these services, to build on the foundation that was made. At the end of the day, the ultimate beneficiaries of these services are not any politician, is not Cathy Hughes, but the people of Guyana. The abundance of funds now available could be and must be spent in allocating funds to these issues mentioned. Maybe the real president can examine what we've discussed in this statement. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media and colleagues. I would also like to take the opportunity to address some of the misinformation spewed by the Vice President in his press conference yesterday. He made a claim that that the PPP left solar panels, solar systems around the country, in which we took these, and then of course on assumption of our office, we took these solar panels and distributed to our strongholds. Quote, his exact quote. The Vice President, as usual, sought to give the impression that we inherited fully functioning systems which were subsequently discarded or distributed elsewhere. However, let me give the country the full example of what was left by the PPP, the only solar panels that were left by the PPP. Here's what they left. In December of 2013, under the office of the then Office of the President, they entered into sole source contract with a company called Agrim, CEC of Italy, for the supply and delivery of 75 3 megawatt solar panels, solar systems, and 25 1 megawatt solar systems for the sum of $1.1 million US. Sole sourced. In February 2014, they paid an advance of 20% to the company. And then in September of 2014, they paid the balance. Despite having received none of the equipment, they entered into another contract with Agrim for an additional 25 3 megawatt systems for a total of US 313,000 Guyana dollars. And by December of 2014, paid out the entire amount. So by December 2014, on the eve of elections, they had paid this company $1.4 million US. And these are the solar panels that the Vice President are claiming. For that money, only 300 of the 1,425 solar panels were ever delivered. No batteries, no inverters, no nothing at all. Just 300 of the panels was delivered. Several efforts were made, and I have all the documents here, were made by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, first to find this company. The company apparently was registered in Italy, to inquire where are the solar panels that they were paid $1.4 million US for in full. GEA also, the Guyana Energy Authority, also made efforts to find out where is the solar panels. What was found out, what was discovered, was quite intriguing. These are the solar panels that they're talking about. The investigations revealed that there is a company called Agrim Italy, SPA, a genuine company in Verona, Italy. However, someone, obviously you know who's in government, registered another company called Agrim CSC SPL out of Italy. The official company has no records of any contract with the government of Guyana. We've contacted them. This information was passed to the ministry, it passed to the audit office. It was passed to SOCU, and we investigated, and it was investigated for 3 years. Obviously, the investigation led to suspicions of local persons well connected to the PPP being the person that established this bogus company that was paid $1.4 million US. And in the end, after having the 300 panels only, valued about 100,000 Guyana dollars, if that much, we wrote the Ministry of Public Infrastructure at that time, wrote to the Office of the President saying that the investigations are incomplete. However, we would like them to release the solar panels, which they did. And we installed the 300 solar panels in a village called Moroccobai, indigenous village called Moroccobai in region number 5. That is the position of the panels, the solar system that the vice president claimed they left, paid a company, a bogus company, 1.4 million US dollars, had nothing delivered. And of course, after the investigation was taking some time, we asked to utilize only the 15 the solar panels in which we installed in Moroccobai, and I don't think Moroccobai is a AP and UAFC stronghold. The vice president has accused me or accused Stabrook Kaito News of me providing Kaito News of questions and vice versa. So I would like to ask Kaito News in particular, since we are being accused of being in collaboration, at his next press conference, can you ask the vice president specifically about this? We have all the documentation. I will share with all the media here on this here. And can you ask him who and where are these solar panels that we paid, and ask him the name of the PPP supporter and financer who established the bogus company in Italy. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what was left via solar panels with this government. And if you'd like to dispute it, obviously I'll share the information. And of course, in his usual style, he will say that we fabricated this information. Fortunately, it is signed by Dr. Mahindra Sharma from GEA. Obviously, I don't think that's how you would accuse him of fabricating. And this was done since 2015. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for the opportunity to address another one of his lies on what was left for the coalition when we assumed office. Thank you.
Mr. David Patterson, or should I say Pato? Mr. Nigel Hughes.
Good afternoon, members of the media. Start of a good weekend, I hope. In the Kaito News edition of the 21st of September 2024, in an article headed "Burroughs School of Art Administrator Resigns Over Racist Remark," the newspaper quoted verbatim what the Minister of Culture said to Mr. Ivor Thom, who is the head of the Burroughs School of Art. And I will just read the exact language as quoted. He said to me, "Your image is not a reflection of what he wants for this ministry." We all know that the motto of Guyana is one people, one nation, one destiny. The motto of the current administration is one Guyana. The Minister of Culture is responsible for representing the Cooperative Republic of Guyana domestically and internationally on matters of culture. As we all know, culture involves all our ways of life, our institution, our arts, and the elements that go in to make Guyana what it is. Culture also involves our religion, and we have several, and we are a multi-religious, multi-ethnic country, and we all ascribe to live in peace. Those remarks by Minister Ramson have not been denied, they have not been qualified, they have not been rejected, and they certainly have not been condemned either by the minister, if it's possible for him to condemn himself, or by the government. It means, therefore, that at a minimum, the statement that was made to Mr. Tom, whether individually or in his capacity as principal or head of the Burroughs School of Art, that his image did not reflect what he wants for the ministry, indicates that the minister is of the view either that Mr. Tom, as an African Guyanese, or Mr. Tom in some other capacity, whether it's head of the Burroughs School of Art or some other capacity, does not reflect the image that his government wants. The people of African descent in Guyana have taken note of the minister's statement, and more disturbingly, we have taken note of the fact that that statement has not been recalled, it has not been explained, it has not been put in a particular context, and therefore we can only assume that the statement reflects the position of the government and the minister, or both the government and the minister or the minister have no difficulty with that statement. That statement is highly offensive. And at a time when the race and ethnic relations in this country are fragile, at a time when everybody is working towards building the solidarity between the several peoples of this country, not only does that statement not reflect our national sentiment, what it does indicate is that the Minister of Education is clearly, Minister of Culture, my apologies. The Minister of Culture is clearly no longer capable of representing this country internationally or domestically on matters of culture. And as a consequence, we believe that the minister, if he's possessed of some level of dignity and decency, will offer his resignation immediately. And so that it is beyond doubt, the Alliance for Change unequivocally calls for the immediate resignation of the Minister of Culture after the utterances of those statements a week ago and his failure to apologize, qualify, reject, or disassociate himself with them. The second issue I'd like to address this afternoon is a statement or statements made by our good friend, the Minister of Education, that the statements I made a week ago about the results that emanated from Region 9 were inaccurate and completely false. Well, I have here, and I will share with the members of the press, the Ministry of Education's own internal document, which I was quoting from. And the matriculation rates, and just so that we don't get into some minuscule argument about whether pass meant matriculation. Matriculation rates essentially are, this is the ministry's assessment of the students that completed 5 years in secondary schools in Region 9. And their percentages, and just in case you missed it, I will repeat them. In 2024, St. Ignatius, their matriculation rate was 8%, Anai Secondary, 7%, Sand Creek Secondary, 6%, Shelton, 8%, Karasabai, 2%, and Kotoka, 3%. These figures came from the Ministry of Education. And what they say is after those students have spent 5 years in secondary school in Region 9, those are the minister's results, and I make them available to the press for them to examine. The final issue that penultimate issue that I'd like to address is that yesterday published in 2 newspapers, both the Stabroek and the Kaieteur News, was a letter that I had written to the editor speaking specifically about the awards of contracts on the Schooner to Crane Highway. We provided specific detail lifted from official websites, which contained data and information about the awards of contracts, those persons who had been completely eliminated from the process, and the results of them. Yesterday, in his press conference, the Vice President indicated that we would receive a response from the Minister of Finance or by last night or by latest today. I know I might have missed it, but as far as I'm aware, there has been no such publication, but I do look forward to it. The final observation I'd like to make is that I read that the government, as announced by the Vice President, has said that copyright legislation is on its way. Several decades too late, we support the call for the implementation for up-to-date copyright legislation. We cannot begin to purport to be a modern democratic society, and we do not have legislation to protect the intellectual property, both of our citizens and those international persons who seek to have their products, their intellectual property products, marketed in Guyana. I am sure that several of you have come across on social media and on the internet on some occasions, particularly in the British Broadcasting Corporation's publications, when you attempt to play the video, they say that the playing of the video is not authorized in your country. That literally means that your country does not have any legislative framework to protect the intellectual property of others. We believe it is long overdue. Our artists have been calling for it for decades. And if the government is sincere in its efforts, we believe that they should table this as a matter of priority. Good afternoon, and thank you.
Thank you, members of the head table. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now invite you to ask your questions. I see, as usual, Davina has her hand up, so we will start with Davina. Please go ahead, Davina.
Hello, good afternoon. My first question is for Dr. Adams. Sir, there are concerns that Exxon's operations are contributing to the heat wave being experienced in Guyana. As an environmental engineer, can you share your views on that? And secondly, the government is preparing to purchase 250 megawatts of power in phase 2 of the gas to energy project via a 20-year PPA. Can the AFC give its thoughts on that and phase 2 of the project as a whole? Thanks.
Thanks, Davina. We'll let Dr. Adams answer, and then Mr. Pats.
You know, it's a question that has been raised. I think it's, there is no data to support, such a statement, if you will, or to arrive at such a conclusion. I think what you would have to have some kind of studies done. It does not appear to be likely that such an operation offshore would cause specifically, a heat wave in Guyana. There are heat waves all over the world. It doesn't mean that the dumping of the water, without question, it means that it's not good for the environment. The water is hot. It could have impact the temperatures of the water and affect the fishing. And it's not only the temperature, by the way, that water that is being dumped. Not only the temperature, that water is being dumped. It's produced water that contains toxic metals such as mercury, lead, and cadmium, and you can continue to name those toxic materials, and radioactivity. And on top of that, every million barrels of oil that is dumped into our ocean carries with it about 40 barrels, every million barrels of water, I thought I said oil. Every million barrels of water that is being dumped into our ocean carries with it, on top of all the toxic chemicals and radioactivity and heat and everything, it carries with it 40 barrels of pure oil. That's the level to which the oil is being removed. And if you add the numbers, because over the life of the field there will be tens of billions of barrels of oil. If you add it up, we will eventually be dumping. We'll be allowed to dump, which would be legally dumping, hundreds of thousands of pure barrels of oil. So that's the problem. But to get back to your question, there is no data. There's no analysis, there are no studies to support, the belief that the dumping of hot water into the ocean could be affecting specifically Guyana's heat wave.
Thank you, Dr. Bitts.
Thank you very much, Davina. Look, phase 1 of the gas ashore project is incomplete. it does not look, and which is the one that's being done now. It's unlikely to be completed for 2025. We've already seen that. The reports are that they've just started piling on phase one, which means piling is the very, as you know, the foundations of the work. They haven't even built it up. The equipment hasn't arrived, and so we can expect a lengthy delay. The government, obviously, they're accustomed to dealing with. I mean, I heard a Jagdeo make a threat about $11 million a month liquidated damages. I can safely predict that will not happen. They're accustomed to dealing with Chinese Sioux-type Chinese firms, whereby when these delays occur, they may meet in a convenient venue, or even at the vice president's home, as we seen in the Vice News, and they would have come to an arrangement on the taxpayers' behalf on how to continue this project without any sanctions. And we saw this on the airport, the CGIA airport, if you could recall, Davina, that by 2015 when we came in, they already spent $70 million and for only 7% of the work. But they now have an American firm, and I guarantee you that the American firm, by mere fact that they're going to arbitration, you know for sure that the government will be on the losing end. I'm quite sure I could predict that. I know Jagdeo will come and say I'm being anti-developmental, but the premise of the whole project was flawed, right? So if you start off at a flawed premise, obviously any smart contractor will take advantage of that, and I do think that's what's happening now. So I predict that the arbitration would not go Guyana's way. That is why he's trying to put in numbers that we may get if we are successful. But they've already admitted that they're late, and they've given them an extension of 3 months. Just by that mere admission shows that we are on the losing end of this arbitration process. But this is typical PPP planning. I want the public to remember that at the advent of 2024, we had power outages, which we still do have, and the PPP's response was to buy 23 container sets, third-hand container sets from a scrapyard in Honduras. That didn't work. They brought a power ship from Cuba. That hasn't worked. And they've now gone out for another power ship. So this idea of going for another phase two, it's typical PPP. Money for the boys, lack of transparency. They obviously want to give the impression that, that they're on it, but it's all a smoke screen. So if phase one is already developing into a white elephant, you could imagine that what phase two would be. I mean, one elephant, maybe a kangaroo or a giraffe. I want to say quite clearly, this is another money for the boys project, and obviously on assumption of office, the AFC will call for immediate audit, not only on phase one and on phase two. So we would like to put everybody that will be involved in this on notice that by November next year is almost 12 months away. Time will go pretty quickly, to be very, very cautious on these pie in the sky deals that the PPP are now doing.
Thank you.
Just for a brief follow-up. You spoke about phase two possibly when the report gets started, but sir, can you say what is the AFC's suggestion or solution, proposed solution to the growth in power demand that we have ongoing?
We had obviously we had a roadmap which is public, right, without oil money, which was working until the PP came back. Obviously, we had once again said that we would have a gas to power plant, which at the time, if I can remind everyone, I keep reminding everybody, the entire power plant, the gas line, as well as the generators, site, and everything like that, was less than $700 million. We are now, and it would have been completed in 18 months at a site selected independently including with Exxon personnel. Wales site was obviously the last ranked site, but of course the Jagdeos did. So we had a plan whereby, of course, we purchased generators, which we didn't rent. We didn't, I mean, obviously, it's very opaque when you rent a generator for more than $3 to $4 million a month. You're paying a rent on it, which is what they're currently doing with the sets and the power plant. We purchased generators way before the demand rose, and if we were remained in office, we would obviously have had a 200 megawatt for less than $700 million. And we also said that we would have been invested in solar. I see they're now trying to do that 4 years after. And I must say that they started the solar in Essequibo. I would like to tell the people of Essequibo they have only the APNU AFC coalition government to thank for that. Until 2015, there was absolutely none. And I challenge Jagdeo again to contradict me. Absolutely no plans for any renewable energy project in Essequibo. The Milo Falls, which I always said upon this scheme, was coming straightly direct to the Demerara DBIS grid. Nothing was in place for Essequibo. Because of the work we did, because of us being able to convince the government of Norway that don't throw their money behind that pipe dream of a mile of falls, because of all the technical challenges and economic challenges, the money that they're using for the 5 megawatts in Essequibo is the money that we were able to convince the government of Norway to give to the government of Guyana to do renewable energy projects. So all the projects that you see them turning and such were directly done by us. And then after, obviously, we wanted to have a hydro, and we had selected several sites. That is a public thing, up and running by 2027. And then obviously and then we continue from there, so that in a short while after we would have been 100% renewable as our commitment. So we had a clear plan whereby solar, the gas energy, thermal generation in the short gap, which we did. A gas energy that was less than $700 million, hydro, solar, and then obviously we would have moved forward. Nothing like the scale and incompetence being exhibited now by the PPP.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. I see Venus' colleague, Renee from Culture News. She has her hand up. Go ahead. Renee? Renee, you there? I see your hand up. Culture News.
Hi, good afternoon. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are now.
Hi, Renee Sandwich with Culture News. Can the AFC comment on the PNCR APNU 20-point plan for the oil and gas sector? Also, I would like to know if the parties support the review of Exxon's PSA and if there's anything AFC would consider adding or removing from the plan.
First and foremost, we commend the PNC for putting out their plan. The Vice President's been asking for it, so now he has it. Obviously, like the Grinch, he would always, whatever anyone does, he would always try to find fault in it, but we commend the PNC for putting out their plan. And obviously, we have always said on the question of the PSA, we would love to review any document, any contract in all sectors, that not only the oil and gas sector, not only limited to Exxon, that would be to the benefit of the Guyanese public. And that is a statement. And I want to say this, Ms. Williams, that the question of a reviewing of a PSA, I mean, obviously, it has to be to the benefit of all, not only the people of Guyana, obviously, it has to take cognizance of the pioneering work that Exxon has done. But if there's a way where we can get more benefits and better safeguards, environmental safeguards for the country, we in Alliance for Change will always be supportive of any such initiative.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Mr. Harris, your question?
Follow, please.
Oh, please, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Beverly. And she wonder, Mr. Patterson, to what extent do you believe that our feeling the PLC as voted by the PLC can in fact provide leverage to any government to get more out of the contract? And secondly, what is the status of the AFC's own plan for the oil sector?
Look, I think Vince Adams will probably want to tell you the exact article there is. I mean, but anybody would tell you contracts are living things in the sense. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but my little bit of contract law I know on long-term contracts, they're living things. If conditions on the ground change, if the conditions, I want to put it this way, Dennis, if the conditions under which Exxon were unfavorable to them, I guarantee you that they would have approached the government of Guyana to ask for a relief renegotiation, a review of the PSA, if it was unfavorable to them. And that is an acknowledgement that contracts obviously can be changed. The PSA, existing PSA, has a clause in it which says that either party can ask for a review or a change. And obviously it has to be done by agreement of either party. So as the conditions change, as the world market changes, as this field has become more mature, technology has advanced and those things like that, I don't think it's unreasonable for either the parties to, at some point in time, say to each other, well, listen to me, these are the conditions in which we're operating now, and based on those conditions which we're operating now, we do think that a review, mutually agreeable, mutually beneficial to both parties can be done. And secondly, the AFC's policy, well in the works, well in advance. As usual, what has happened, I mean, I don't know what the process is or the parties use, but we said to each other, we have to sit with our membership, particularly our national executive members, and go through each and every one of the policy positions. That was requested by the national executive, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through the policy positions so they can also be spokespersons, not myself and Vince only. I think by now, Dennis, you're probably tired of hearing me speak on this. So obviously, when we finish, and we have that scheduled very shortly, so at the next, when that's done, I'm sure that my colleague here, Onyx, will be equally versed on our policies, so you don't have to depend on the old heads, Pato and Vincent, to respond into these comments.
Thank you.
Let me add quickly. I lost contact there for a minute. Yeah, and I totally agree with David. In terms of changing, of requesting change or renegotiation of the contract. It's basic contract law in any part of the Western world that if there are major changes, they're not demand, but either party can request renegotiation. But I want to address our good friend again, the vice president, who always just keeps spouting nonsense. His major criticism is he said, well, the only thing that the coalition likes doing are studies and reviews. Well, that's understandable coming from him, because they do not do any reviews and studies. As we have seen, no feasibility studies, no environmental impact assessment, which means that there is no planning. This is a no planning government, and you cannot be successful if you do not plan. So that's where he's coming from when you talk about no reviews. And here is the dishonest part of his statement. He reads, the deviousness in his mind. He reads the first part of the policy, the statement, where it says, we will review the PSA, and based upon that review, we will engage Exxon. This is when I say we have, that's what I'm speaking, as if what's written into the document. What the document says is we will review the document, and then based upon that review, we will engage Exxon. He didn't read that other part for people to know. that it's the other part that comes. He wanted to sound as if, well, what was stated in the policy was just to review documents, which is a blatant lie and dishonesty. So, and the other thing that and like David said, you know, we're glad that part of the opposition is coming out with a plan that doesn't exist. They've been in government for 4 years now. Where is their oil and gas plan? They're making it up on the fly. Every single day you hear something, and even in the press conference, you hear something this week, you hear something the next week. There's a solid plan, and here's the other thing that this plan has, or the strategy or policy document has.
Dr. Vince, can I interject here? Dr. Vince? Dr.
Yeah.
Vince, I just want to interject here because we are quickly running out of time, and I see.
Okay, all right.
Yes, so I will ask the Dennis to contact the PNC to discuss more on their plan, very good plan that they've put out. So let me take the question from Mr. Adam Harris, please.
A very good afternoon, everybody, and thank you. Mr. Patterson, you spoke about the solar system and the amount of money that appeared to have disappeared because they only got 300 units from 1,470 somebody, I think. Could you say whether any move was made to collect the missing money? And I mean, I don't really want to ask this, but why was there no attempt at prosecution since you discovered what appeared to be a fraud? And for Mrs. Cathy Hughes, you talked about internet connectivity, and a lot of money is spent, and a lot of what you did, particularly in the hinterland. Are you in a position to say whether those hubs still exist, whether they have been removed or what? I'd like to know, please.
Ms. Hughes will respond first.
Thank you, Adam. Adam, I have not been able to really map, give you a total assessment vis-a-vis the amount that were created and whether they are still in operation. Just in my travels across Guyana, I meet individuals in some communities where it is still in operation, thankfully. However, for example, a week ago when we were in Sarama, I was told very specifically by Sarama that the infrastructure we had put in place there had been removed and put in another village. And in fact, I said, so does that mean that you have no internet? And they said that they put something else in, but it does not work at the moment. So whichever way you cut it, Sarama, for example, had internet and no longer has now. The challenge that I want to raise is that the technology, as we know just from what we deal with in our homes, some of the modems may have an issue, some of the cables, the wiring, and that will require constant follow-up. And what we had done is we had put a local technician in most of the regions that would follow up on these hubs. One of the first things the PPP did was to close off that program, which was done through the NDMA, and send home those individuals. And of course, technology has changed. The more some people would log on to the infrastructure we put in place at that time, now you could imagine that it would be more numbers using the bandwidth, so it would become slower and challenges. Our point is that we need to build on what was put there at this point in time.
Thank you very much, Adam. Let's start off. You asked a very good questions. What I was responding to, what I read there, is that Vice President Jagdeo, once again, I have never seen somebody who could barefacedly come in front of TV and he said it out that they were putting in ICT hubs in 100 villages and those things like that. Poppycock. They took the money, these 100 solar panels, and I have this and I'll share this with you, Adam. They took the money They did have a plan, yes. So they went to this bogus company in Italy for these ICT hubs, these 100 villages, and I have the list there, and you have it there, and they said they paid the money out, nothing was delivered. Nothing was delivered. So the mere fact that he said that they had it and they were doing it and it was on stream, incorrect. Nothing was done. This was in collaboration with the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs. It was then Office of the President, source. And so when we got in, and this letter here is this submission is dated June the 26th, 2015, because obviously when we were campaigning and when I got in, and just like Kathy is saying, that we heard about these 100 solar ICT hubs and those things like that. So we wrote, and this was a response that we have that we paid for it. We paid 1.4 million US dollars. We're supposed to get all these equipment, and in this letter I will share with you, Adam, you have all the equipment that never ever arrived. All we got was the 300 panels, the panels alone. When we got this information, first line of questioning we did is ask the GEA to contact the company to find out where is these equipment. They had no success. We then asked the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to contact the government of Italy in the red meeting. That's what we do, to find out what is the position with this company. That is when I discovered that there are two companies, one a genuine company, if you go on the internet, you'd find it, and one a bogus company. And the report was, remember that there was a report about a barbershop getting ICT. This was the exact same thing. Instead of being a barbershop, it was just simply a house at the end of a cul-de-sac. That was the report that came back to me. So we then said, fair enough, we sent it to the Auditor General, and we sent it to SOCU. Obviously, that's not my there were, I must say, rumors and allegations, which I won't repeat. We're a very litigious company here. But should the Vice President want to challenge me, I could sit down and to repeat it. I probably would, provided that if I'm sued, he'd pay the damages. However, there were allegations of who the companies were. And this process, as I said, was ongoing for 3 years. And then at the end of the third year, this 300 sets were panels out of the amount of things. You're supposed to get batteries, you're supposed to get inverters, you're supposed to get cables, the smart switching system, all that came with the 300 panels out of the 1425 panels. So at the end of it, having 3 years, that's when I wrote to the Office of the Ministry of the Presidency at the time, saying I acknowledge that there is ongoing investigation. I acknowledge it's incomplete, but allow me, if they would permit us to use the panels, and which they did. So I can't say exactly what happened. I'm sure Sarah may have looked into it as well. I'm sure if I look at my record, I will see a letter from Sarah. But Adam, you have to remember also the era in which we inherited. You have to remember that there's a phantom Chinese businessman that bought our 20% shares of GT&T. He's supposed to pay $30 million US dollars, paid the government, the then government. I mean, you can ask, Mr. Brassington was there, Jaglio was there, all the other persons that were now sitting down at high tables, we were all there, paid the then government $25 million US dollars, and we heard nothing about the $5 million US outstanding. When he was finally contacted, and this is reported, the gentleman bluntly refused to pay any money, and he claimed in his letter that he's already paid the PPP. I'm looking for it there. Right, he's already paid the PPP officials from the PPP, and refused and challenged us. Of course, the agreement was you have to carry them to the arbitration in London. And the guy had so much gall, he told us that he will, by the time we finish fighting the case in arbitration, the cost of the arbitration to get back the money would be more than $5 million. I mean, I think Catherine is nodding her head. So, the legal fees to get it back. This is true story. This is the government Jagdeo is comparing us with. I mean, this is the people with me. So Kaichor News, once again, you could ask him about the money for and who were the PPP officials that the man wrote and claimed that he paid the $5 million to, and ask him, tell his friend Pato ask you to ask him.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, David, Onyx, Nigel, and Dr. Vince. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this press conference. Hope to